For the past 10 chapters or so, Isagi Yoichi has been getting completely dismantled by Hugo. I mean, at this point, he is not just losing to him, he completely made Isagi irrelevant. Because simply put, Hugo shut down Isagi at every turn. Even working together with his rivals Rin and Baro did not work in the presence of Hugo. And to add insult to injury, the moment Isagi fell, Karasu took over the team. And now he is both the beating heart and the brains of Blue Lock. And without the Crow right now, Japan would not be able to do anything against France. And so the situation could not be darker for Isagi. The guy is being forcibly pushed into irrelevancy. However, here's the crazy part that actually made me raise an eyebrow, because even though Isagi is getting his ass handed to him by Hugo, the community's reaction to the whole thing is kinda weird. I mean, there are definitely a lot of Isagi's fans that are waiting for his return, and rightfully so. However, I've seen a huge portion of the community over on Reddit or on Twitter being so happy that Isagi is getting completely dismantled, and somehow they are thinking that this is his end. And to be honest, celebrating the downfall of Isagi is fine, to each his own, and maybe you don't like Isagi as a character and so that's fine. However, thinking that this is his end, even though this is a show about his rise towards being the best striker, is kinda weird to me. And so I decided to make a video explaining exactly what the hell happened to Isagi and how he fell from grace, but also and more importantly to emphasize that we need to have more faith in our main character. And so let's explore exactly that, starting immediately with a quick recap of what the hell is happening right now to Isagi Yoichi. You see, the current situation is very dire. I mean, Hugo is the perfect counter to Isagi. I don't actually remember him being this useless against any player ever since the second selection against Rin, or maybe even the first selection against Baro. And this by itself is very interesting because ever since he discovered that his weapon is his adaptability, Isagi has been able to perform even against the strongest of opponents. Even in the PXG game where he was facing a lot of busted geniuses, at least we've seen him and Kaiser being somewhat successful. And honestly, if it wasn't for the betrayal of his hero Noel Noah, I feel like Isagi would have performed better against Loki. For the very least, he would have been more composed. However, that situation is actually very relevant to ours today, because unlike before, Isagi is finding himself completely useless against a talented learner. This time, he is not being completely stomped over by a genius's genius. Instead, he is being completely dismantled in his own areas of strength. And this is the crazy part because we've never seen this happen before. Even against Sai in the U20 game, we've seen that sure, he could not shoot in the presence of Sai, but at least he delivered an assist to Baro. And then in the NEL, even though Kaiser was insanely ahead in the first two games, Isagi still understood how Kaiser functioned. In the first game, he was the only one who noticed that Kaiser was lurking from behind. And then we all know how he dissected him in the Manshine City game and acquired Metavision, a weapon that allowed him to fight back. And you have to understand, both FC Barca and Manshine City games are less than 30 minutes, which means more time has passed in those two games than the current game against France. However, up until this point, Isagi is still completely lost against Hugo. To the point, the guy is trying so hard just to avoid him, and at the end of the day, it is proven to be completely futile. And so, what the hell happened here? How is Hugo this much stronger than Isagi? Well, as I said, he is a talented learner like him, and so he beat him in his own games. Hugo's vision is ahead of Isagi's. His metavision completely outread Isagi's metavision. And then Hugo is smarter than Isagi, and of course he is more physically gifted. And so in every interaction they have, Hugo can see the field better, he can analyze it faster, and he can dominate Isagi physically. Meaning for the first time, there is literally nothing Isagi could do that would counter Hugo. And thus we have the current field right now. Isagi's weapons are completely neutralized and he is akin to a useless player on the field. And as I said, to add insult to injury, Karasu utilized this moment and took over the team entirely. And of course, as we all know, one of his biggest rivals completely abandoned him because Baro simply does not feel anything from Isagi right now. However, let's actually talk about that. Let's explore the social impact of Isagi's downfall on the pitch. Let's explore how everyone reacted, but more specifically, let's explore how Baro Baro and Karasu treated Isagi right now. Starting straight with the king, and this is because I've seen on Twitter that a lot of people are thinking that Isagi's downfall is upon us because Baro simply said that he doesn't feel that Isagi could lead him to a goal, and a lot of people are comparing this to the Nagi situation, where Baro said that he doesn't feel the same about Nagi like before. And so, is there actually merit to all of this? Well, yes and no at the same time, and this is because Baro is a genius. And you have to understand how geniuses think. Geniuses don't have a process and they don't really care about the road. They only care about what moved them in the moment. And in this moment where Isagi is completely useless, Baro as a genius simply stops caring about him entirely. And we've seen this before from the likes of Loki, Luna, but more importantly from Noah, when Kaiser awakened and Isagi posed no threat. Noah was quick to discard Isagi even though he was giving him everything on a silver platter before, simply because that's how geniuses think. If you do not ignite their fire, they would simply throw you away. I mean, look at the interaction between Rin and Isagi in the PXG game. When Rin went berserk and no one could stand to him, he told Isagi that he is no longer his rival. However, when Isagi came back and pushed him to reach a new impulse, immediately Rin got engulfed by his aura and he was feeling that rivalry again from Isagi. And that's precisely how geniuses operate. The moment Hugo choked the life out of Isagi, Baro simply abandoned him. On the other hand, Karasu actually took over the team for a completely different reason. Unlike Baro, who simply stopped feeling anything from Isagi, Karasu on the other hand actually took advantage of this opportunity. And that's because he has been plotting this for a long time. And this is yet again a misconception that I've seen the community fall into. A lot of people are saying that Karasu is jealous of Isagi. And I am here to tell you that he is definitely not. For the very least, I know that he is not envious. Maybe there is a little bit of jealousy, but I personally don't believe that. And this is because Karasu's reaction to Isagi is very natural and healthy. He is asking what the hell I am lacking that Isagi has. And if you ever been in any competition, there are people that seem to have the same talent as you, but could beat you in a lot of instances. And so you wonder to yourself, what is difference between me and them? And how I can improve myself. He simply saw an opportunity in Isagi's downfall and he is trying to seize the team back so he can finally have a fighting chance against the Demon King. And honestly, even though this is a show about competition, this has to be one of the healthiest forms of competition we've seen in the show as of yet. And I found this interesting because it is a rivalry between two talented learners, and so it is always about the level of thinking and not really the level of talent on the pitch. Even though he was frustrated, Karasu understood that the difference between him and Isagi must lay in the way of thinking and the mentality. And the moment Hugo presented a way for him to actually even out the playing field, Karasu took that with flying colors. However, you hear me talk like this, and you hear me say things like how Baro doesn't feel anything from Isagi, or how Karasu took advantage of his downfall, and you might think that this is the end of Isagi Yoichi. However, I am here to tell you that this is actually a good thing. Maybe not to Isagi, but from a storytelling perspective, this is actually rather perfect. After having a generational run in the NEL, it is only fair for Isagi to actually face adversity on that level. Think about it. If Japan walked over France much like they did with Nigeria, everyone might drop Blue Lock because the writing is simply shit. However, by introducing a very strong team and by introducing a new character that put everything the Blue Lockers went through to the test, things are heating up once more. I mean, even my friends who don't really watch or read Blue Lock are telling me that the show is making a lot of heads turn, which is definitely a plus for Blue Lock. However, the reason for that is simply Hugo and how he dismantled Isagi. Yes, him dismantling Isagi is a good thing. And if you are a fan of Isagi, understand this. Your favorite character doesn't need to win every time for it to be a good story. I understand a lot of people are frustrated of the way he is being handled, but all of this adversity and all of these failures are just fueling the Isagi that will come up on top at the end of the U20 arc. And so even if for the next few games Isagi is completely out of it, I urge you guys to focus on the big picture. And the big picture is this loss against Hugo will build Isagi like none other. Because as the saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And you have to understand, we've seen this before. Isagi's losses to Rin only made him stronger. He became the genius of adaptability after he lost to Rin the first time. And he mastered both luck and flow after he lost to Rin the second time. time. And so a bigger loss at the hands of Hugo would only mean a bigger win for Isagi later down the line. And in fact, this is not the only point of view. There is an entirely different way of looking at this. If Hugo were to be introduced and he ends up being a disappointment against the new Isagi, Rin and Baro, then by all means the U20 World Cups would become very boring. And that's definitely a big no-no from the writer's perspective. I mean, I've never seen the community be this hyped about a player ever since the introduction of Snuffy. And so if anything, Hugo himself is a huge win for us as fans, because right now, in addition to Charles and Loki, Isagi has another huge adversary to beat in order to win the U20 World Cups. And by the way, Hugo's presence and how dominant he is also hypes up some players like Sai and Bunny, which, to be honest at this point, I can't wait to see what they can do at 100% efficiency. And so from all of this, you can see that this small downfall for Isagi is actually a good thing for the long run. However, and before I address the community, I want to talk about few other weapons that matter a lot into why Isagi has been handled the way he did. The first of which is answering the question of why Isagi isn't using his full arsenal. I mean, look at the Demon King at the end of the NEL. He utilized some busted weapons that we are not seeing right now, mainly that Super Saiyan Metavision form and the fastest piece. Both weapons are extremely busted and they are of the highest of calibers. And so how come Isagi is not using them? Well, the answer is actually threefold. The first is that Isagi might have been using them. However, Hugo is just that busted, and so even the fastest piece cannot really save you from this guy. However, this is a weak theory of mine. The other two are much stronger, and in fact they are kinda intertwined. The first, of course, has everything to do with the environment. You see, Hugo has been able to cast the ultimate restriction, and Isagi being a freedom type player, his performance tends to suffer when he is in a very controlled environment. Not only that, if you remember how the Super Saiyan Metavision came about, it came when Rin, Noah, Loki and Kaiser all were doing their thing, and Isagi had the freedom to do everything from the shadows, and so in that ultimate freedom, Isagi was able to ascend. However, because he is put under extreme restriction, Isagi cannot conjure the same level. And this is something that we've seen it happen multiple times in Blue Lock, and honestly it is one of the reasons I think its power system has to be one of the best. Just because you unlocked a weapon does not mean you could use it every time. I mean, sure, it works for weapons like Metavision and the Predator Eyes, but for certain weapons like Luck and this mode specifically, it is hard to attain them if you are not in an environment that is favorable. And of course, one of those reasons is actually the flow state. As we've seen up until this point, the flow state of Isagi has been completely limited, and that's once more thanks to Hugo's restriction. However, the second concrete theory is actually more interesting, because I feel like it shows the genius of Hugo. You see, Hugo has been targeting Isagi's weak points. He has been able to assassinate him in the front lines, and that's where Isagi is at his weakness. And I think Hugo would continue to decimate Isagi until another striker, maybe Rin, Shido or Baro, steps up to the leading role. We need a striker lead in Japan as well for Isagi to start playing from the shadows and playing to his own strength. There, I feel like he could have some upper hand over Hugo. However, I don't know if he could do that in this game. And that's, guys, my reasoning why Isagi is not the same as he was in the NEL. Especially because in the NEL, if you remember, he always had Kaiser to count on. And thus, I feel like we need another striker to step up in order for Isagi to pull out his best performance. But next, and before I address how the fans reacted to all of this, I want to talk about a small point that I am planning to make a video on in the future. You see, from what I've seen, the fandom is split. A lot of people love Isagi to death, and a lot of people dislike Isagi. And every time I see the discussion between the two, it gets a little bit weird, especially from the fans' point of view. A lot of Isagi's fans would tell people that don't like him that you shouldn't read Blue Lock because he is the main character. And to that I gotta say, that's completely wrong. You could like any show for whatever reason. Everyone has free will to like whatever the hell they like. If you don't like the main character of a show, that's fine, especially for something like Blue Lock where it is very complex and a lot of characters are written beautifully. However, at the same time, there is a reason why people hate Isagi. However, I feel like they don't like the wrong version of Isagi, if that makes any sense. You see, I truly believe that Isagi as a character sucks. However, as a main character, he has to be one of the best. And this is something that I've seen a lot of people struggle with. Just because Isagi is an amazing main character, just because Isagi is the perfect main character for a show like Blue Lock, it does not mean that he is a great standing character. And I feel like the writer has done this deliberately. He did it so he can move Isagi up with the story in a way that I've never seen in any other anime. And here's briefly what I am talking about. You see, Isagi has a perfect childhood. He has a very normal life and a very normal backstory. He doesn't have any depth of character. He has been the same character throughout the show. Sure, his alternate persona that he has on the field was interesting in the first few games, but it is the same up until this point. Every time Isagi is nice outside the field and people underestimate him. Then he is the Demon King on the field and everyone is at awe with his greatness. And to be honest, this is bland character writing, especially when compared to other main characters like Yuki, Rin, Kaiser, and even Noel. However, at the same time, Isagi being a normal kid is perfect for a show like Blue Lock, where the writer is trying to convey that being average does not limit your growth and you can still outperform even geniuses if you have the desire and the willingness to reach that high level. And in that, I don't think any other character ever would fit in Isagi's shoes for Blue Lock. And I mean, all of this is in addition to the fact that Isagi is very smart. And to be honest, I like it when main characters are smart. For some reason, it is the trope in shonen manga and anime that the main character is dumb. I mean, look at Goku, Luffy, Gon, Naruto, Natsu. Isagi, on the other hand, is a very smart main character with an infinite adaptability weapon. And that's precisely why he fits as the main character. That's precisely why he is perfect and why you should like this aspect to him. On the other hand, as a standalone character, I really do not like him that much. As I said, he is not that interesting, and honestly, the writer did that for a good reason. However, and I know at this point you are wondering why I am yapping so much about Isagi's character writing. And the simple answer is, if you understand this, then your reaction to his growth and him facing adversities would actually be different than what I've seen from the community. You see, the main reason I disliked the community's reaction to Isagi's downfall is that most of the fans are just reacting to an incomplete narrative. And so I really urge you guys to be just a little bit patient with Isagi. And I mean, as I just said, he is the perfect main character for this show. You see, everything that Hugo represents right now, everything that is happening to the Demon King is meant only to fuel him. And so, as I said before, even his supposed downfall that would happen in this game and probably the next few games is honestly a good thing from a story perspective, because it builds Isagi's character beyond what we have just seen in the NEL. And you have to remember, Isagi improved like crazy in the NEL. Every game took like 20 to 30 minutes, and in that game Isagi would improve once, twice, and even 3 times. And those improvements include busted weapons like Metavision, the fastest piece, and whatever the hell this white-haired Super Saiyan look. However, right now, the writer is taking a different approach. He is presenting characters that are very hard to deal with and that require a lot of building in order for Isagi to reach that level. And so, to sum it all, we are right now watching the fall. Sure, it is taking much longer than the NEL for Isagi to come back, but you really need to have faith in this guy. As I said, he is the perfect main character for this show. He doesn't give up and no one adapts better than him. And so just give it a little bit of time and I assure you guys that you all will be blown away of Isagi's next big evolution. And actually, let me go back to something that I just said. I said that Isagi might fall in this game and in the next few games. And I've seen a lot of people push back onto this as well. However, you have to understand, the U20 World Cups is a huge arc. And honestly, I would hate it for it to be the NEL 2.0. I would hate it for it to be Isagi failing this chapter, then coming up with the solution in the next. I want it to be methodical. I want the writer to take his time. I want the writer to build other characters at the same time as Isagi. And for it to be as Blue Lock winning the U20 World Cups and not just Isagi winning it. And for that reason, I feel like the downfall of Isagi right here should be milked to the fullest. That way we can actually play the long game. Not only for the hype when Isagi reaches the next big evolution, but also to build Japan as a whole towards winning the U20 World Cups. And so to end the video, I gotta say this, please let the writer cook. Just trust in Mr. Kanshiro and his ability to deliver peak writing for us. However, that's all I've got for you today, guys. I really hope I cleared the confusion regarding Isagi's downfall, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. But until next time, thank you for watching.